There is a specific kind of person you have met. They don't talk about what they're working on. They don't announce their plans at dinner. They don't post about their goals on Monday morning and their setbacks by Thursday night. They move quietly. They show up consistently. And then one day, without any fanfare, without any build-up, they have simply become extraordinary. You wondered how they got there so fast. The truth is they didn't get there fast. They got there the whole time you weren't watching, because they understood something that most people in the modern world have completely forgotten. Silence is not absence, it is protection. And what you protect, you can build. What you announce, you often abandon. This is not a modern insight. It is not the product of some productivity guru or lifestyle influencer. This understanding is ancient. It was forged in the philosophical schools of Athens and Rome, tested in the courts of emperors, in the cells of slaves, in the minds of men who faced exile, loss, and death, and still maintained an inner composure that the people around them couldn't comprehend. The Stoics understood that a human being has a finite amount of something invisible but absolutely real. Call it energy, call it drive, call it the internal fire that makes you actually do the thing rather than just talk about it. And they understood that this resource leaks. Every time you speak your plans before they are built, every time you seek approval from someone who cannot give you what you actually need, every time you open the door of your inner world to someone who doesn't deserve to be there, the fire dims a little. Not dramatically, just a little, but a little repeated enough times becomes everything. In this video, we are going to go deep into one of the most counterintuitive and most powerful principles in all of Stoic philosophy, the discipline of silence, privacy, and protected growth. Not the silence of someone who has nothing to say, but the silence of someone who understands that what they are building is too important to dilute with premature words. If you've ever wondered why you feel so motivated when you first have an idea and so deflated after you've told people about it, this is the answer. If you've ever felt the strange sensation of feeling like you've already accomplished something just by talking about it, this video explains exactly what is happening to you and exactly what to do about it. Stay with me through every section. Each one builds on the last. Part 1. The hidden cost of being known too soon. Let's begin with something that happens to almost everyone, and that almost nobody understands. You get an idea, a real one, not a casual thought, but something that feels different, something that lands in you with weight. Maybe it's a business you want to start, a discipline you want to build, a creative project you've been circling for years and finally feel ready to begin. In the moment the idea arrives fully formed, there is a specific kind of energy that comes with it, a hunger, a drive, a sensation that you could start right now and not stop. And then you tell someone. And something strange happens. The energy shifts. The hunger dulls very slightly. The urgency fades by a degree. You still care about the idea, but the sharp edge of it has softened. By the time you've told 3 people, the idea that once felt like a fire has become a comfortable story you tell about yourself. This is not weakness of character. This is neuroscience. When you share a goal or a plan and receive even the mildest positive response, a nod, a smile, and "oh, that's great," your brain registers a small social reward. And that reward, however minor, partially satisfies the motivational drive that was supposed to propel you toward actual achievement. Your mind, in its deep and ancient architecture, cannot entirely distinguish between the social signal that you have done something and the actual doing. The result is a motivation leak. You have spent some of the fuel without moving the vehicle. The Stoics identified this dynamic long before modern neuroscience had the vocabulary to describe it. Marcus Aurelius, writing to himself in what would become the Meditations, returned again and again to the theme of doing without announcing. Not because he was cold or antisocial. By all accounts, he was warm, engaged, and genuinely interested in the people around him. But because he understood what announcement cost him. He wrote, "Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one." That line is usually quoted as a general call to action, but read it in context and it is something more specific. It is a man telling himself to stop performing virtue and start practicing it. Stop talking about who you're going to be and become that person. Stop arguing, discussing, explaining, justifying, and simply do the work. The moment you stop needing anyone to know what you're building, something remarkable happens. You start building faster. The energy that was going into narration goes into creation. The attention that was monitoring other people's reactions comes back to you where it was always needed most. This is the first principle of Stoic silence. The announcement is not the achievement, and mistaking one for the other is one of the most common and most costly errors a person can make. Part 2. Your inner world is sacred ground. Epictetus said something that sounds simple until you really sit with it. He said, "Men are disturbed not by things, but by the opinions they hold about things." Most people read this as a statement about how we process external events, how we choose to interpret what happens to us. And it is that, but it is also something else. It is a statement about the relationship between your inner world and the outer world, about what happens when you let too much of the outside in, and what happens when you give too much of your inside away. Your inner world, your private thoughts, your genuine aspirations, your real fears, your actual plans is not simply information. It is the substance from which your future is made. Every significant thing you will ever build or become begins as something that exists only inside you. An intention, a vision, a commitment made to yourself in a quiet moment. That substance is fragile in its early stages, not because you are weak, but because new things are always fragile before they have had time to develop roots. A seed is not weak because it can be destroyed before it becomes a tree. It is simply in a stage of development that requires protection. When you expose your nascent plans to the wrong people, or even to well-meaning people at the wrong time, you are not simply sharing information. You are inviting external forces into a space that is not yet ready for them. You are introducing doubt before you have built enough conviction to withstand it. You are inviting comparison before you have developed enough self-certainty to remain unaffected by it. You are handing people a blueprint of your inner life and hoping they will treat it with the care it deserves. Most won't, not out of malice, simply because they are operating from their own fears, their own limitations, their own unexamined assumptions about what is possible. The person who tells you your business idea is risky is not necessarily wrong, but they are speaking from their own risk tolerance, not yours. The person who raises an eyebrow at your ambition is not necessarily more realistic than you. They may simply have settled earlier. The person who asks, "But how are you going to make money from that?" is not necessarily practical. They may simply have never seen anyone actually build the thing you're describing. None of these people are your enemies, but none of them deserve access to your innermost architectural plans. Seneca wrote to his friend Lucilius about the importance of choosing your companions with extraordinary care, not because people are dangerous, but because we are deeply social creatures who are profoundly affected by the company we keep. He said, "Retire into yourself as much as you can. Associate with those who will make a better man of you." Note what he did not say. He did not say to close yourself off from all human connection. He said to be selective, to choose the people who will help you grow, and to protect your inner world from those who won't. This distinction is everything. Your dreams are not public property. Your plans are not owed to anyone. Your struggles are not content for other people's consumption. You get to decide who enters that space. And learning to make that decision with care, rather than out of a need to be seen or understood or validated, is one of the most important skills you will ever develop. Part 3. The Trap of Approval. Let's talk about validation, because this is where most people get lost. There is a deep human need to be seen, to be recognized, to have your existence and your efforts acknowledged by other people. This is not a flaw. It is evolutionary. Human beings survived for hundreds of thousands of years by being part of communities, and being seen and valued by your community was literally a survival mechanism. The need for approval is not something you should be ashamed of, but it is something you need to understand. Because in the modern world, that ancient need for tribal recognition has been hijacked by social media platforms engineered to monetize it, by a culture that equates visibility with value, by an attention economy that profits every time you feel the need to be seen and act on it. The result is a generation of people who have developed a genuinely dysfunctional relationship with approval, who feel the compulsive need to document, share, and receive feedback on experiences before they have even finished having them, who judge the value of a meal by how it photographs, a trip by how it looks on a feed, a life by how it appears to strangers. This is not a character flaw. It is a system working exactly as designed. The system benefits every time you seek external validation. You don't. The Stoics would have recognized this dynamic immediately. They spent a great deal of their philosophical energy examining what they called externals, things outside our direct control, like the opinions of other people. And their conclusion was consistent. To make your well-being, your motivation, or your sense of self-worth dependent on externals is to place your life in someone else's hands. Epictetus was not gentle about this. He said the person who seeks approval from others has essentially enslaved themselves, not because approval is worthless, but because making it necessary makes you permanently vulnerable. You can never control what other people think of you. You can never guarantee that you will receive the recognition you feel you deserve. And if your drive, your identity, and your momentum all depend on that recognition, then your entire inner life is held hostage by forces that will never be reliably yours. The alternative the Stoics proposed was radical in its simplicity. Stop seeking, start building, let the work become its own reward. This is not about becoming cold, isolated, or indifferent to others. It is about relocating your source of motivation from outside yourself to inside. It is about developing what the Stoics called autarkeia, self-sufficiency. Not independence from all human connection, but independence from the need for approval as the fuel that drives your actions. When you stop needing people to validate your goals, something structural changes in how you pursue them. You no longer stop when the approval stops. You no longer redirect your efforts based on what gets the most positive response. You no longer slow down when someone expresses doubt. You move from the inside out consistently, quietly, without needing the audience. That is where the real power lives, not in the applause, in the freedom from needing it. Part 4. The discipline of protected progress. There is a practice that the highest performers in every field, from elite athletes to serious artists to the most effective leaders, share almost universally, even if they've never read a word of Stoic philosophy. They protect their process. They are often willing to talk about results. They will sometimes discuss the general principles that guide them, but the actual daily work, the specific habits, the vulnerable early stages, the failures and adjustments and quiet struggles they guard carefully, not out of secrecy, out of understanding. They understand that the process is where the growth happens, and growth requires conditions. It requires space, stability, and freedom from premature judgment. A plant doesn't grow faster if you keep pulling it up to check the roots. A muscle doesn't develop more effectively if you interrupt every workout to explain to someone what you're doing and why. Your development works the same way. Every time you narrate your process to people who aren't involved in it, you shift your relationship to that process. Instead of the work being its own reality, something you inhabit fully, it becomes a story you're telling. And stories are shaped, consciously or not, by their audience. You emphasize the parts that sound good. You minimize the parts that don't. You start to see your own journey through other people's eyes, which means you start to make decisions based on how they look rather than how they serve. This is the subtle destruction of premature sharing. It doesn't kill your goals all at once. It bends them, gradually, imperceptibly. You find yourself working on something that started as your true vision and has quietly become a performance. Marcus Aurelius understood this danger from the inside. He was one of the most observed human beings who ever lived, Emperor of Rome, his every public word and action scrutinized, recorded, responded to. He had almost no privacy in the conventional sense. And yet he maintained a private inner world so robust and so disciplined that his personal journals, never intended for anyone else to read, reveal a man of extraordinary psychological depth, wrestling honestly with his failures and his doubts in a way that his public persona never could. He built a wall around his inner process, not to hide but to preserve. You need the same, not because you are an emperor, but because what you are building matters. Because your vision for your life, however humble or however grand, deserves to be built on solid ground, not assembled from the fragments left after you've given too much of it away in conversation. Protect your process. Show up for it daily. Let it develop in the quiet, unhurried way that real things develop, and trust that when it is ready to be seen, it will be seen not because you announced it, but because it is undeniably real. Part 5. Consistency is the real statement. We have talked about what to hold back. Now let's talk about what to put forward. Because silence without action is just absence. Privacy without discipline is just hiding. The Stoic code of silence is not a code of passivity. It is a reallocation of the energy that was being spent on narration, redirected into the work itself. And the work done consistently becomes its own most powerful statement. Think about the people in your life who command the most genuine respect, not the people who talk the loudest or who keep you most updated on their plans and progress. The people who, when they say something, you listen, because you know they are someone whose words are backed by action. The people who, when they commit to something, you believe them because you've watched them follow through, quietly and without ceremony, again and again. That quality, the quality of being someone whose consistency speaks for itself, is built exactly the way you'd expect. Through consistent, private, unglamorous action. Through showing up when nobody is watching. Through doing the work not because it will be recognized, but because it is the work. The Stoics called this living kata fusion according to nature. For a human being, nature means reason, purpose, and directed effort. It means being the kind of creature you are capable of being, not in the eyes of an audience, but in the reality of your daily practice. Consistency is not dramatic. It does not make for compelling social media content. A person doing the same important thing every day, quietly, with commitment, without announcement, that is not a story that the modern world is set up to celebrate. But it is the story of every person who has ever built something worth building. The late nights that nobody knows about, the early mornings before the world is watching, the 10,000th repetition of a skill that still isn't perfect but is better than it was yesterday. The decision, made again and again in private, to keep going when stopping would be so much easier. None of that needs to be witnessed to count. It counts in the only place that matters, in the actual quality of what you are building and the actual person you are becoming. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Never esteem anything as of advantage to you that will make you break your word or lose your self-respect." Your self-respect is built in private. It is built in the moments when you do what you said you would do when nobody is there to hold you accountable. It is built in the gap between the person you perform for the world and the person you actually are when performance is impossible. Close that gap, not by performing better, but by being more consistently, privately, genuinely the person you want to be. Let the consistency become so deep that the performance and the reality are the same thing, not because the world is watching, but because you are. Part 6. CHOSING your inner circle with precision. None of what we have discussed means that you should be alone. The Stoics were not hermits. They were deeply engaged with the world, with ideas, with people. Seneca wrote thousands of letters. Marcus Aurelius led armies and governed an empire. Epictetus ran a school. Community matters. The right people matter enormously. But, and this is crucial, the right people are not everyone. They are not even most people. They are a small, carefully chosen group who have earned the right to see your inner world, not because they are perfect, because they are aligned, because they challenge you to grow rather than dragging you back toward comfort, because when you share something vulnerable with them, they hold it with care rather than using it carelessly. How do you identify these people? The Stoics would give you a simple test. After spending time with someone, do you feel more clear or more confused? More energized or more drained? More like yourself or more like a performance of yourself? The people who belong inside your inner circle will consistently leave you feeling the former, more clear, more yourself, more capable. These are the people worth opening to. These are the people whose presence in your private process will strengthen it rather than dilute it. Everyone else gets your results. They get the finished work, the completed project, the person you've become after the transformation. They don't get access to the process of becoming. That is not coldness. That is wisdom. Seneca wrote, "I am not born for one corner. The whole world is my country." He was not a small man in his engagement with the world, but he was ruthlessly selective about who he let into his actual confidence. He knew that the quality of a life is shaped significantly by the quality of the conversations you allow to influence it. Guard that quality fiercely, not from fear, from understanding. Hash your charge from here. We began this with a simple observation. The most powerful people you know don't announce what they're building. They simply build it. And one day, without warning, the thing is there, fully formed, undeniable, impossible to dismiss. That is not magic. That is the result of a philosophy practiced daily. The philosophy that your inner world is sacred and deserves protection. That your motivation is a resource that leaks when you speak prematurely. That approval from others is a trap dressed as a reward. That consistency in private builds more than visibility in public ever could. And that the people who deserve access to your inner world are few. But when you find them, they are irreplaceable. This is the Stoic code of silence. Not the silence of someone who has given up. The silence of someone who understands what they have and what it is worth. Tonight, before you speak your next plan, pause. Ask yourself, who does this serve? If the answer is primarily your need to feel seen, keep it, feed it, build with it. Let the hunger stay hungry a little longer. Because the hunger is the fuel, and the fuel is precious. Marcus Aurelius had the entire Roman Empire watching him and still chose to do his most important work in private, in a journal, for no audience but himself. That is your invitation. Do the work that nobody sees. Build the life that speaks for itself. Then let it speak. If this landed with you, share it with one person who is building something quietly right now. Subscribe for more Stoic wisdom, not motivation, not hype, but the real philosophy of a life built with intention. The work is yours, protect it.